Hello, Black Swamp podcast listeners. Thanks for tuning into episode 5 of our relatively new podcast series. And thanks to everyone who's been listening over the last several months. As always, feel free to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and help spread the word to friends and colleagues. Future episodes will feature Joe Gramley, Megan Arns, Keith Aleo, Mike Truesdell, and more. So there's tons of great eavesdropping opportunities as we chat with BSP artists and endorsers. Today, you'll be listening in on a conversation with percussionist Adam Hopper. But before we get to that, we'd like to make a future podcast episode a little more interactive. We've started planning a frequently asked questions series, and we'd like your help. If you're curious about anything BSP related, drop us a line. Maybe you'd like to know more about the BSP team, how a specific product line was maybe developed, or where we might be going for lunch this Friday. Either way, we'll try to answer as thoroughly as possible without giving away any fancy BSP secrets. Simply shoot us an email to info@blackswamp.com with your name, where you're from, and what your question is. If you prefer to hear the sound of your own voice, feel free to forward an audio message as well. That email again is info@blackswamp.com. Maybe throw podcast FAQ or something in the subject line so we know what's going on. So, back to today's episode. Adam Hopper is a BSP concert artist and has been a longtime friend and contributor to Black Swamp Percussion. Besides being a percussionist and educator based in Southern Kentucky, Adam also started Beatbox, which is an online subscription-based publishing company. That's Beatbox, Beatbachs. We'll throw the web link in our show notes. Adam is also an active composer and a recent dad. So all of this is the making of a great conversation. Here we go.
This global warming thing gets a bad rap, but when you're out of school the second week of May, it's like a pretty good deal.
And so we got a lot of things we can talk about, but you're in Kentucky, currently director of percussion at Southwestern High School.
That's right.
And also director of bands at Southern Middle School in Somerset.
That's correct.
So
both of those are they're two that's part of the county school system that we have here in Pulaski County, which is the kind of southeast Kentucky, which is where I live.
Oh, okay. And that sounds like a lot of work. Like not only being a band director at a middle school where there's tons of kids and parents to deal with, but then you're also running an entire percussion program for the high school. Like,
yeah.
So how do you?
It's a lot. Fortunately, the way it's set up, and we've had to kind of grind it into what we wanted it to be. When I first got the job, I didn't get the job as being 10 years ago when they hired me. It was to be the middle school band director. At that time, there was about 50-something kids, 6th through 8th grade, and there was about 40 kids in the high school band. So there was no need for a percussion director, and the middle school band was pretty small. And the head director at the high school at the time was starting to kind of grow the program pretty quickly. And after a couple of years, it ended up being there was 60 or 70 kids in the high school, and the middle school program was up to about 130 or 40. And so we started team teaching a little bit, and that kind of led me to where I was able to just kind of step back and do more of just the percussion side of things when we did team teaching at the high school. And so that's kind of how that happened. It wasn't the initial plan. So it's kind of just kind of growing pains.
Right.
Since then, he's retired, and we have a new head band director. And so we kind of co-teach one class during the day. So my first period is actually at the high school. I teach a percussion class. In the fall, it's marching percussion class, and in the winter, it's percussion ensemble.
Okay.
And then when that class is done, I hop in my car and I truck it across town really quick to get to the middle school, and then I teach the rest of the day at the middle school.
And that's like straight up like concert band or wind ensemble, not, I guess, in a
it's
middle school setting, concert band. And
it's all concert band, and then there's a couple general music classes tossed in there as well, but those are survival classes.
All right.
we're just making it.
And so you have 2 degrees, music ed, and a master's in percussion from Campbellsville. So you are, like you came out of school kind of on a band director track, or this kind of transpired by chance?
No, I came out with a music ed degree with the plan of being a band director,
right?
And was able to get a job at the time pretty quickly. It only took me a semester after being out of school to find a job, and that was a place that I was previously employed, and that situation ended up not being a great one, and I ended up not staying there, but just for a year.
Right.
And then I got the job at Southern Middle School, and worked there for several years. And at the time, and Kentucky doesn't have this anymore, but at the time there was a law that if you were a public school teacher, you had to, within 5 years, start a master's program.
Right.
And then within, I think, 3 years of starting it, you had to complete it.
Right.
So I decided if I was going to do a master's, I was going to do it in percussion performance. So I went, so it was teaching as well as doing a master's in percussion performance through Campbellsville.
Oh, okay. So you had a job, I guess, and then getting your master's.
At the same time.
Right. I didn't really think of this till now. There's a couple band directors in the West Michigan area that are percussionists. Some people I went to school with or taught. And I never really. Do you think it's harder as a percussionist to kind of keep up and get an ed degree? I don't know. There's some stigma around, what a percussionist or a drummer can and can't do, or what their strengths are, and if that kind of transfers to. Transfers to music education, but as far as, working with instrumentalists and wind programs and stuff like that.
I don't think there's a stigma as far as
I'm making that up.
I'm making drama. Yeah,
right.
Like as far as like my employers go, like I don't think that. Like I can't imagine any of my principals ever being like, "Hey, real quick, do you know all of your oboe fingerings?" Like I don't think any of them would do that.
Right.
But I do seem that you get like some like wind player, non-percussionist band directors every now and then. Like you'll hear it's sort of like, "Man, he's a really good band director, and he's a percussionist." It's sort of like it's oh wow, Andy's a percussionist. But I think I don't really get that too much from people. And maybe Kentucky's a little bit different, but I think if you kind of looked around the state of Kentucky, a lot of really successful programs have either a head director or an assistant director that are percussionists.
Right.
And it's also, it seems, and this may just kind of be from in my little small sphere that I operate in, but it seems like a lot of the percussionist guys still play. Like, there's a lot of trumpet player or saxophone player band directors that don't play very much.
Sure.
Anymore, but all the percussion guys I know, they still gig quite a bit. So that may be part of it too.
And you gig, obviously, like you're out playing.
Yeah, I try to stay active, and just because I enjoy it, and by virtue of where I live, there's not a ton of dudes that play here. Right. So I play a lot by virtue of somebody needs a drummer for something, and I usually get the call.
So what you're saying is all available percussionists should move to the greater Somerset, Kentucky area?
Yeah, if you are really dying to have a gig, there are some occasionally here. They usually don't pay very well. So if you're wanting to like make a living, then you may look for somewhere else.
So as far as like a curriculum in your band program and your percussion methods class, is that something you kind of got to start from the ground up? Because
I've tried a couple different things. Like I looked through a little bit of it's been a lot of talking to people with great programs, from around the country, that because the community's so small, people are always pretty cool if you just shoot them an email, even if somebody you don't know, send them a Facebook message or something, and everybody's pretty cool with responding. And I've got some friends that are in similar positions and have really strong programs, so you kind of pick their brain a little bit. But there's no defined curriculum that I go through necessarily, but I sort of have an outline in my head of things that we want to have accomplished by certain times.
Right.
So it's not like, I know some people use, I think, the Keenan Wiley book, and
Right.
there's some other things like that. And it's really tough for me to have kids, especially in the middle school setting, plunk down $50 for a textbook.
Right.
You know, that's a tough sell for parents around here. It's not like, we're not dirt poor around here, but we're not, you know, it's the mountains. Like it is, right. It is what it is. So I have to be a little bit conscious in terms of financially what we ask kids to do. So a lot of it is, you know, especially in 6th grade, we just work out of the Red Classic Beginning Band Standard of Excellence book, right. Which I've got a lot of problems with, but it at least gets the job done. And then in 7th and 8th grade, when they can start branching out to do more percussion, you know, percussion centered stuff, then it's a lot of handouts. It's a lot of exercises. We work out of the 5-minute drill book that Ralph Hicks and Eric Rath wrote, which is a great book.
Yeah, sure.
You know, some of the, you know, the Stone book, and there's an old, I can't remember, Haskell Har mallet book that we work out of, and sure. It's just kind of piecing it together. This curriculum of things that I want to see them accomplish by X amount of time.
Yeah,
and for the most part, it's been pretty successful.
Yeah, and you're certainly covering a lot of ground there. I mean, and I'm totally familiar with what you're doing as far as drum set stuff and marching stuff. So you're able to, and obviously mallet and orchestral percussion kind of idioms, like you're able to balance all that, you know, from one season to the next. I know you mentioned, like, and obviously your methods class in the fall, you're focusing on kind of more marching and drumline stuff, and then you transition over to more orchestral stuff, and you work in drum set there too, or you're kind of
sure, yeah,
covering everything.
Yeah, I'm a drum set guy. Like, that's always been my favorite thing, my favorite percussion instrument. And that's partially because, like, when I was in school, we didn't have a marching band, and we didn't have a percussion ensemble. We had a concert band and a jazz band, and of the two, I thought jazz band was way cooler. And to be in the jazz band, you had to play drum set, and so that was always my thing. Was I liked playing drum set, and I feel like we don't teach it enough, and we don't teach it correctly. And I'm talking about myself. Like, I'm trying to figure out the correct way to teach it in a scholastic setting. I feel like we all spend a lot of time on marimba and a lot of time on playing timpani and a lot of time on crash cymbals and tambourine, and all that stuff's great and it's important, and we should be spending a lot of time on all that stuff. But at the same time, I don't play a lot of timpani gigs. I play drum set a ton, you know, and so for these kids that are they're graduating high school and they're not necessarily going to go be music majors, and they're not necessarily going to go, you know, study percussion outside of high school. You know, they may play in church, or they may play in a wedding band, or, you know, that's a skill that is still a skill that, you know, can continue on out of high school, and we just kind of leave it out. It's almost like we just decided drum set was going to be for everybody that weren't real percussionists. You know?
oh yeah, I hear
it's
that.
Like we had a meeting.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's like at PASIC one year, everybody got together and they said, okay, the insurance salesman can have drum set. We'll take marimba.
It was like a subcommittee.
There's a subcommittee.
No,
and that's not cool.
I hear, it's when I was in school, which was a lot longer ago. I mean, if you played drum set in jazz band or pep band, or, you know, I played drum set with the theater, it's because my parents bought me a drum set, and I took a few lessons, and I learned how to play, and good enough to play in those different ensembles. We got a lot of orchestral instruction. In marching band was huge. The high school I went to, and it really wasn't until I got into college that there wasn't even sort of an option to study some sort of drum set. And it's totally what I do now. I mean, I don't, you know, when I was out of grad school, I played a lot of orchestral stuff, extra here in West Michigan, played a lot of pan, steel drum. And now pretty much I played, you know, drum set at church. And that's what I love doing. And it's totally was one of my first loves. I mean, I got my, you know, after I got into school, is this my interview or your interview? Do you want to hear me keep talking?
No, I like it. I'm enjoying it.
I mean, I got a drum set in like 7th grade, and it was like, there I was playing kit, and then I stayed in band and stayed interested in music. So kind of back to where I started, and I love it. So
Yeah, you talk about being in high school forever ago or whatever, but I mean, me and you both, like we were both at the age that MTV still played music,
oh
and
yeah,
it wasn't just teen pregnancy shows like it is now,
right,
and like you could actually turn on TV and see a dude playing a drum set, and so I think that was for you and me and for everybody else, that was an initial like that's cool. Like I could do that. If Tommy Lee can do it, I can probably figure it out. You know.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I wanted to ask you was like, we're kind of jumping all over already, but like something creative or a spark that got you really interested in playing percussion. I mean, was there something when you were that age that like, man, I want to do this. I want to be involved in music and specifically in playing drums and percussion. I mean, there was for me.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I think for everybody. I've taught band for a long time. I've never had a kid just wander into the room and be like, "What's in here? I guess I'll do this."
Right. Like, what's all this noise?
But yeah, but for me, it's a little bit weird. Like my grandfather was a band director and a choir director for many years, and he retired. I mean, long before I was born. But he opened a music store with my dad, and they sold. This is a weird, like Southeast Kentucky combination of store, but it was a music and jewelry store because what two things don't go together like music and jewelry.
Right.
But they sold music and like pianos, and they rented band instruments and things like that. But they also had a jewelry store, and so they did that. And my dad's a really good trumpet player. My mom played clarinet in high school, and like everybody, like I've got a cousin that's a composer. I've got another cousin that's a French horn player, and she's married to a French horn player in the West Point band, or in the Army band at West Point, and then. I got another cousin that's, pretty accomplished vocalist and different things like that. So, I mean, like we've got quite a bit of musical talent in the family.
Sure.
But for me, the thing that really kind of pushed me into doing band and to doing music was, from Kentucky, I want to play basketball. Like that's all I really wanted to do.
Right.
And that was like, I kind of decided like that'll be me. I'll just play basketball. I was 9 years old, and my arm was really bothering me, like right around the end of fourth grade, right at the beginning of summer between fourth and fifth grade.
Sure.
And talked to my dad, and of course my dad was like, "You're fine. You pulled a muscle or whatever." I was playing baseball and swimming and basketball and all this kind of stuff. And what ended up happening though was we went to the doctor one day. He finally was like, "All right, fine, let's go to the doctor." So we go to the doctor, and it just so happened. I'm using the air quotes because I'm not a big coincidence guy, but it just so happened that there was an orthopedic oncologist that came to our little doctor's office in Monticello, Kentucky, one day a month, and he was there that day.
Wow!
And they did an X-ray of my arm, and he kind of called it. He was like, he said, "You have a tumor in your arm." So this is a really long story to answer the question, but
right.
So anyway, I was diagnosed with a kind of cancer in my right arm called Ewing sarcoma, which is it's a solid tumor, and it was malignant and pretty rare. Not a lot of cases in the United States. Right. And at the time in 1995, the survival rate was about 50%. So I was sent to St. Jude Hospital in Memphis, and I did about 6 months of chemo, pretty intense. And then I had what's called a limb sparing procedure, which is where they removed my right humerus, which is the you've got your arm, you got the bones on the bottom, then you got the bone on the top, the one that connects into your shoulder is your humerus. Right. And they removed my deltoid, and when they removed the bone, they replaced it with a titanium prosthetic bone.
Oh, okay.
And then
I've seen that. Yeah. You've posted pictures online, I think, before of that. Like literally,
I post the X-ray. Yeah,
it's pretty wild,
and it's pretty. Yeah, and it's hanging in there for being 20. Yeah. What is it? 24 years old.
Yeah.
But they took out my deltoid muscle too, which kind of left me with about 40% mobility in my right arm. So like I can't raise my right arm above my head.
Right.
I can't really even hold it straight out. Like it's pretty kind of, it's not like Bob Dole where it just like hangs at your side, but it's similar. Like it's kind of the same.
Right.
So anyway, all that to say this, you could sign up to be in band in fifth grade in my school. And so this was kind of after all that. And a physical therapist friend of ours had said, that might be being in band, like playing the drums and stuff. That might be like a good way to like start developing some strength, and if he's interested in band anyway, and maybe playing the drums would be a good thing to do. And so that was the weird backwards way of kind of getting involved.
Right.
And I figured out relatively quickly that I wasn't horrible at it, and I enjoyed it. So I was just kind of like, okay, this is gonna be the thing. I'm gonna do this.
Right.
Because when you're like in fifth and sixth grade, your mind changes really fast.
Yeah.
So
that's
the story.
Especially when it's potentially life altering. Like I mean, obviously it was like there's tons of things going through your head at one time. Did you find that playing and percussion was a good form of physical therapy?
Sure. Yeah. There's a lot of so after the surgery, they had told my parents and me, they'd kind of said, don't expect to be able to do a ton.
Right.
You're going to be really limited in what you're going to be able to do going forward. And this is just, basically to keep it where you have some functionality in your arm and that you don't die.
Right.
That's pretty much the whole point of this surgery. But I pretty much do whatever I want to now. Yeah. And part of that was probably because so quickly after surgery, I started using it and doing things with it, and playing the drums is part of it. Right. And not that I was like doing anything crazy or anything weird, but just to develop some sort of motor skill with it. Just drumming through the Standards of Excellence book.
Right.
As a fifth grader, just did a lot of strength building and a lot of coordination and things like that probably wouldn't have otherwise developed.
And then, I mean, obviously that led to like a huge interest in pursuing music as a career. Like,
right.
Going through high school, you knew you wanted to be in music education then, or you just kind of wanted to keep playing, or?
Yeah. When I was in high school, I was in a rock band.
Of course.
Because you have to be.
Right.
And I was drumming a lot, and I was in a rock band, and we were nominally successful for however successful a hard rock band in Southeast Kentucky could be in 1999 or 2000 or whatever. And so I enjoyed doing that, and then I wanted to do music in school, and I was like, well, I guess the smart play would be to do it in music ed, and to do it this way I can teach, because I liked the concept of teaching. I liked the idea of being a teacher.
Sure.
Because I went to, again, like the school that I went to was a little bit weird, and it was a little odd. It was a little small. Like I only graduated with 48 people. Like it was a really small school. And so the teachers I just had such a respect for them and really, really loved them. So I thought I could do a teacher. I could be a teacher.
Right.
So it was kind of like, if I can't play, I'll teach. Like if a record deal doesn't fall from the sky, and like then I can teach. But
right.
the teaching thing, I certainly was. It wasn't like it wasn't the silver medal. Like, okay, I didn't. We're not it's not rock stars, so it's teachers only. It was totally kind of choice 1A and 1B.
Right. So you had your eyes on being on MTV then. You wanted to be.
Well, that was pre-teen pregnancy shows. So.
Right. And then you go to Campbellsville. Is that close to Somerset? Sorry, my Kentucky geography is pretty horrible, but.
Your Kentucky geography is probably like most everybody else's Kentucky geography, which is reasonably bad.
Right.
No, it's Campbellsville University. It's a small private Christian college right in the middle of the state. I mean, literally, if you looked in the middle of Kentucky and you just threw a dart, you would probably hit Campbellsville. And in fact, on the Campbellsville campus for a while, they had a plaque in one of the sidewalks that said the geographic center of Kentucky, which I always thought was kind of nonsense, because I don't know how you find the geographic center of something that isn't a circle, but and also they moved it by about 10 yards while I was there, because they built a new building and built an add-on to the library or something, and they just moved it.
Yeah. So, you can move geographic centers of pretty much anything. I think it's all pretty relative.
I just thought that was funny. Slide that over a little bit. We got to build this gazebo. It was very funny. Anyway, so that's where I went, and they had kind of a growing music program at the time. A guy named Bob Gaddis was the dean of music, and the director of bands was a guy named Dr. David McCullough, who's now at the University, I believe, of South Alabama. there's also a David McCullough that's like a writer, but this is a different guy. I think he's at South Alabama. And then Dr. Marty Scherer was the percussion director at the time. He's a Northwestern grad, so kind of came out of the Michael Burrett, Shi Wu, lineage of things. So it was a great place to be and just kind of find yourself, because honestly, I didn't really know how to research it. It wasn't like I was online looking up, performance opportunities and scholarship audition stuff. I mean, I literally just showed up one day for a scholarship audition and was like, I'd like to play the drums. And they were like, come on.
You're hired. So
you got the gig.
Yeah, right.
And so it was, luckily, again, like not a coincidence guy, but I mean, it was, luckily for me, I was placed where I was supposed to be, because had I known what to look for, I don't know that I would have found myself there. Yeah. But luckily I was stupid and didn't know what I was doing. And that's where I was. So it worked out really well.
Well, yeah, similar. My case is pretty similar. I mean, I was going to high school in West Michigan, and I didn't know I wanted to go into music. I knew it was sort of my passion, what I was good at. I didn't want to be a basketball player like you, but and I was kind of into a couple different things. And my dad was an engineer, speaker, like audio engineer. I was like, I can do that. And I can be, it's kind of music related, or I can do both and be an engineer, do whatever. And I got into calculus and I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm never going to be able to do this. And so I switched to music at the local, I was going to pretty much the kind of Grand Rapids area university called Grand Valley State. And I switched to music, and my parents were like, duh. Like, we're kind of curious what you were thinking. So, and then, interesting enough, the guy that, his name's Greg Secor, he teaches percussion at Grand Valley State. He was teaching at the junior high and then the high school that I went to. And then when my first year going in the music program at Grand Valley was his first year teaching at Grand Valley. So we're like, oh, hey, we know each other. It's like in Boy Meets World, like Mr. Feeney just follows Corey, you know what I'm saying? Like all the way through. It's the same thing. Like, no, not you again.
Yeah, right.
But I think it was totally kind of meant to be, because I knew who he was, and like we already got along. We knew each other, and I was able to learn a lot from him. And then he was able to point me in directions to go to grad school and do other stuff. And so I had a ton of like performance and like musical growth, obviously, studying with him. So back to you.
There you go.
So one thing I really want to talk about is you have a ton of like composition projects and things going on in that field, that world. Like, did that start to develop while you were going to college, or is that something that you took an interest in after the fact?
I tell people all the time, the secret to composition success, for whatever little success I've had, is you have to go fail theory 2 and 3 or fail theory 3 twice or whatever. Right. I was the worst. And again, like I just didn't have any kind of basis for it going into college. I was just terrible. I was the world's worst theory student. Yeah. And I got unlucky. I was with a theory class of geniuses. Like everybody else in the class was really good and I was terrible. Right. So yeah, no, like my interest in composition, I think, just kind of came out of plunking around and kind of just finding melodies and finding harmonies that worked.
Right.
And then once I did sort of have the theoretical knowledge of how to create a piece of music that made sense, I just did it for fun. And for a long time, I wrote complete just garbage, just complete crap. And I mean, still, I would say a lot of what I write is just complete garbage and complete crap.
Yeah,
but every now and then you hit something that's pretty good, and you try to ride that horse as long as you can.
Sure.
So yeah, I've been very fortunate, especially with I've got some stuff published through CL and in North Carolina, and those guys have just been awesome, helping me with my career side of the publishing side of things, and Ghost Garden, which is a marimba solo that I wrote, has been pretty successful, and every now and then I hear that it gets played a lot. Brad Meyer, who's at Stephen F. Austin, said yesterday he was judging solo and ensemble in Texas, and the Ghost Garden got played a ton or something. So like that makes you feel pretty good. It's still amazing to me that anybody ever plays it, because you write it, it just lives on your computer for a while, and then because you're so close to the process that the fact that it's even like that somebody actually bought it, paid money for it, and then sat down to learn it. It's a weird thing. But I've been very blessed that people have liked what I write.
So relatively, it's a more recent kind of endeavor, or the last 10,
I would say
10
so.
years or less.
Oh, sure. It lasts maybe, probably less than 10. Probably, let's see, I'm trying to remember when Ghost Garden, when I wrote it, like probably the last maybe 6 or 7, 5 or 6, something like that.
Yeah.
It's not been, it wasn't like I woke up one day 10, 15 years ago and said, I'm going to start writing music. It's just kind of, it just was, well, maybe I can write a marimba solo.
Right.
And in Ghost Garden's case, I just got tired of teaching Yellow After the Rain, honestly.
Well, I think it's a standard piece, and but I think a lot of projects like this, or new pieces, or it really, anything creative sometimes comes out of wanting to do something new, wanting to do something different. I mean, even a lot of the products that we develop are because there's a purpose for it, and maybe it solves a problem in the performance world, but also maybe we see something similar and we're like, we think it's been done this way for a long time, why don't we do it a little differently, or why don't we come up with something that's kind of more creative. So I think that would totally transfer over to your teaching, and you've been using this piece for a long time, it works really well, but you want to do something fresh, you want to do something different, you want to do something that's your own. So it totally makes sense.
I just I was sending kids for scholarship auditions or honor band auditions or whatever, and it just turned into who can play Yellow After the Rain the best, or who can play Rain Dance, or the standard lit. And so I thought, man, 4 1/3 marimba, that's all we have. We didn't have at the time, we have a 4/6 now. We still don't have a 5, So I was getting kids that were, maybe ready to take a step up to a harder piece of music, but we didn't really have the equipment. So, there was I think just maybe it's probably just a little bit harder than Yellow or something, but it still uses just a 4/3. And, I don't know. I felt like there was time for something else in there.
Right.
That was a little different.
And, you've been gracious with us to like the intro to this podcast is one of your pieces from 5 on 5, and you've agreed to let me use it on some of our other video intros and stuff like that. And it's like, even those pieces, snare drum solo with the accompaniment are like super accessible. They're not that they have to be easy to listen to, but they're interesting. And I would say, I haven't tried to play them, but they would be fun to learn, because of the I guess backing track aspect. How did that kind of come about? Because it seems like, as I'm kind of scrolling through some of your pieces, that a lot of them do have an electronic component or a backing track. Again, just another interest of yours you wanted to try to incorporate into that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and there was I'm 33, so I think being raised, I don't want to say being raised around hip hop, like I was, growing up in the Bronx or something, but I mean, hip hop music and electronic music was ever present, just by virtue of my age.
Right.
And so, listening to Wu-Tang Clan or Notorious B.I.G. or whatever, just the electronic based pop music was something that I've always liked and I've always been interested in. Mm-hmm. And now it doesn't take a great amount of knowledge or a great amount of equipment to create electronic music on your own. I mean, so I did every track from 5 on 5 was done on GarageBand, which is a free program. If you haven't heard, right. It wasn't even like it was Logic. It was just the free program on GarageBand. And so it was, I think I was just wanting, I don't like listening to snare drum solos that if I don't know it, I have no idea if you played it right. You know, like there's a lot of snare drum solos that if I don't know that tune, you could just be up there making it up and I don't know the difference. And
sure,
I felt like with accompaniment, that would make it a little bit more, I think a little bit more musical. It forces the performer to play more musically. And I just don't know. I feel like just electronic backing stuff seemed like a cool idea. And I kind of had the idea for it, or just an idea of doing a piece like that. So I wrote a piece called Right Track, which C. Allen published, and it was for solo snare drum with a single stick. So you have one stick, and then you palm mute, sort of like an epiniki, like Brazilian instrument, and then it has a backing track with that. And so C. Allen published, and Nathan from C. Allen, I was talking to him at PASIC. This would have been like 4 years ago, and he kind of said, "Hey, if you'd be interested, we'd love to do a whole book of things like that." So that's where 5 on 5 came from. So I wrote it, and again did the same kind of thing, just everything through GarageBand, everything kind of I would say advanced high school, but now I'm sure there's like 7th graders that are just drilling it. But quote unquote advanced high school, early college, in terms of vocabulary. And again, it seems like people are digging it. I think you can throw it on a concert, and the non-percussionist in the room can enjoy it, which I think is something that composers forget sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, we're not all percussionists. Like I use my parents as kind of the measuring stick. If Tim and Jane can listen to it and dig it, then it's probably pretty cool.
Well, that's what I guess I was saying. It's like accessible. Like I think people, like non-musicians and non-percussionists, I think would enjoy hearing it on a recital. I think you're totally right. So you're doing your own composing. One piece that I saw, I've seen online a little bit, is the bridge. I guess it's not a piece; it's a collection of pieces like marimba solo with or without quartet. Commissioned by several people: Eric Willie, Logan Ball, help me out, Benji Baker.
Corey Friend, and Eric Schmidt,
right. So how did that kind of develop? These obviously,
Corey Friend is a friend of mine. We play in a group every summer called the Sacred Winds, and that's how I've gotten to know Corey. He's a Morehead State guy, which he's got a Kentucky connection, and he was doing his grad work at UNC Greensboro with Eric Willie, and I don't know if it's part of Eric. I don't know if it's part of his program, but I think they maybe have to commission or something like that a piece. And so Corey asked me if I'd be interested in doing a book of 4 1/3 marimba solos. And in the process of that, we came up with the idea of, well, what if it was 4 1/3 marimba solos, but each solo had optional, it would be an optional additional trio with it. So if you were a student or if you were a percussion director and you learned this marimba solo and you wanted to throw it on a percussion ensemble concert, you've got a vibraphone part, a Glock part, and a cajon part that you can add relatively easily and make it a quartet. So that was the idea. And then I actually self-published that. So that's available right now, digital download on my website. But yeah, it's all, and I've had some people buy it and play it, and they seem to be like it kind of, again, fits a purpose.
Right.
And again, I think just real live percussion directors, and not in these monster programs where, we've got 7 5-octave marimbas and 6 practice rooms. We at my school, we have 3 marimbas, and one of them looks like it got hit by lightning. So if
Recently.
I got, yeah, it's that it's the black Musser marimba. I can't think of the model number, M something or other, that every school in the world has. It's that one. And, so if I got multiple kids learning marimba solos, it's just 3 people on a board at a time. So I need to figure out a way to have kids be able to learn lit, but kind of spread it around a little bit. So, you add a vibraphone part, you add a Glock part, you add a cajon part or whatever, then it turns into a quartet piece as opposed to everybody's trying to learn solo at the same time.
Right. Well, I think that's interesting that you sort of developed it together with the concept that it could be played as a solo or, as an ensemble. Because I was kind of curious about that. If it was like I had a collection of solos and then decided to do something bigger with it, but you went in kind of knowing it was dual purpose. Did you have to? I mean, obviously, you kind of have to think of how it'll be played as a solo first, right? Like,
right.
So that when it is being played as a solo, like maybe there isn't a bunch of stuff missing, obviously holes or like anything that doesn't make sense as a solo.
Yeah, that is, from a compositional standpoint, that is a little bit tricky because the voice that has to play the entire time is the marimba voice. So they're playing the entire time, whereas the Glock and the vibe and the cajon part, they bounce in and out. So there's a lot of counter melody kind of stuff, and that supports the main theme as opposed to maybe the themes being passed off between different voices. Right. So that was a little bit tricky, but I think all 5 of those tunes are actually, I think they actually came out pretty good. And the one that was written for Corey is called Country Mile. And I think that piece, it's a pretty challenging tune. And I've seen some performances of it online and I've just seen, I say kids, they're like, I was thinking like, this is like a college level grad school piece. And then like you see like 9th graders just knocking it out of the park.
Well, yeah, side note, I mean, the stuff, like when I go to PAS or Midwest and I see high school ensembles play, it's mind-blowing. Like, I saw Dan McGuire's ensemble, it's Science Hill, play, and I think at Midwest, it was like, holy cow, those kids are good. And it's really impressive. But side note over.
No, you're totally right. And every time I think like, man, we are getting this thing whooped. Yeah. Then you go to PASIC and then you think, well, back at the drawing board. We played at the I took my kids to play at the chamber contest, the chamber, I can't think what they call it, but the small ensemble contest at PASIC, the high school division. We played Thank You by Ivan, which is a great tune. Yeah. And all of Ivan's stuff is good. But we played that, and we got to watch a couple concerts that day. We watched Boca School for the Arts. I think it's what's called.
Okay.
The Bach, the Bach, School for the Performing Arts, middle school percussion ensemble played that year. It's Drew Tucker and Eric Rucker, those guys down in South Florida. That's their program. And kid just knocked out of the park, played great stuff, played it super, super good. And some of my kids were like, man, what high school is that? It's like, fool, that's a middle school.
Yeah.
You should feel bad.
And then, so you're composing, getting commissioned, doing cool stuff. And then last year, or maybe I don't think it was 2 years ago, you launched Beatbox.
It was January 1st of this year.
Oh, okay.
So 2019.
Oh, wow. I thought it was 2018, but obviously I'm wrong. Which is pretty cool. It's I'm trying to think how to explain it, like an online subscription-based publishing company. So a customer could, go to your website, beatbox.com, I guess.
Yep.
That's correct. Then beatbachs.com, right, and can subscribe and then have access to percussion solos or literature. Is that how it works?
Right. That's how it works. Yeah. So it's a yearly membership. It's a $20 a year. And then each month there are new works put on the site, and each one of those works is $10.
Okay.
And so if you're buying reasonable quantities of percussion literature, then you come out money ahead in the long run in terms of what you're purchasing, because some of these pieces are large ensemble pieces. They might be 10 or 11 players, and which a piece that would normally be $50 or $60 is $10. We only have 10 composers. And that is in an effort to make it a little bit more streamlined.
Yeah.
And we are doing a thing right now where it's featured composers each month. So for the month of June, Matt Moore is the featured composer. And so he's got a marimba solo, which is up right now. It's called, the name just blanked on me.
Yeah, I'm looking for it right now.
Spicy Jam.
Okay. Spicy Jam.
Which is a 4 1/3 octave marimba solo, which is it's a cool tune, and Matt's a great composer and a good friend. Actually, went to college with Matt, so he writes really great stuff. But that's kind of how it works. The goal is to make it to where the non-percussionist band director or the really motivated individual, or the percussionist band director, there's always that constant looking for new lit, looking for new things to play, looking for new things to study, to where every month you've got something that pops up that's new that you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah.
And there's also some free things on there too. We've had a couple guest contributors that have given us some things that you can download for free. So there's lots of cool things on the site.
Yeah. And are these, so the composers, I'm just looking at your site now: Brandon Arve, Nick Fields, Corey Friend, yourself, Franco Perez, Matt Moore, like you mentioned, Caleb Pickering, Mike Rowe, Josh Smith, and Jordan Williams. Like, are these all guys you are people you knew previously, or you approached them? You'd kind of seen some other stuff they were doing. How did you kind of decide to collaborate with them?
Well, there's kind of a thread of Kentucky connection with almost everybody. The two guys that are kind of outliers on that are Mike Rowe and Caleb Pickering. I just like Caleb's stuff a lot. I think he writes really, really fantastic stuff. Great large ensemble pieces that are very challenging, but they are super fun to listen to. Like, I'm not challenged. I don't say I'm not challenged as a listener, because I'm sure he has that stuff as well, but I just enjoy listening to the stuff, and I know that it's a tough piece, and I know that whoever's playing is playing it well. I just like his stuff. So I reached out to him kind of just on a whim, and he was totally down with the idea. And then Mike Rowe came as a suggestion through Corey Friend, because they're good buddies, and Mike writes great stuff as well. He wrote his first piece that he put through the site. It's called Strait of Messina, and it is an absolute horse of a piece, marimba solo, and it's a suite. It's 2 movements, I think. So it's really a great piece as well. So, and it's composer driven. Like, I don't, as the guy running the site, I don't really put it on them what I tell them. This is the edits you should make. This is what you should do. I leave it totally to them. And also, as composers, once their piece comes off the site, it goes back to them.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
So after a year, their piece isn't on the site anymore, and it goes back to them, to which they can do whatever they want to with it. They can publish it through a traditional publisher like C. Allen or Tapspace or Roll-Off or whatever. If they want to self-publish it, they can, and they've got a little bit of data to kind of let them know, on as far as sales go, what they should do. So it's a little bit of an experiment.
No, that's actually really interesting. So they kind of made a commitment for 1 year to have their piece up, and I've been scrolling through their snare, multi pieces, marching stuff, keyboard stuff, world, chamber. Like, there's a ton of content on here. And this is our pieces. They've been composed specifically for beatbox and for this project.
Yeah,
or their kind of piece.
Yeah. sometimes it's things that have been specifically written for this site and for this moment. Matt's piece was like that. There's been some other ones that guys have had, written a while back that maybe have been played but never published. Right. Some of them were ideas that just kind of needed the extra push to get it to the finish line, which I'm guilty of myself, getting things 3/4 of the way written and think, I'll start on something else, and then never finishing it. So there's been a couple things like that, but it's a little bit of an experiment. And again, thinking about the way the world is going, subscription-based products, subscription-based services are kind of becoming, it's not a novelty anymore. Now it's normal.
Oh yeah, it's totally modern. Yep.
And it's
the way to go.
And we still buy our literature, our percussion literature, or just music in general stuff. We still buy it the same way. Yeah. Which is, and then like when I have my students, I say, all right, man, I want you to play marimba solo. All right, cool. All right, good. Go on to C. Allen, or go on to Lone Star, or go on to Steve Weiss or whatever, and find one. Okay, if they go in and they type in marimba solo to Lone Star, there's going to be like 1,200 options, And this is a way that maybe this just kind of dilutes everything down, distills everything down to where it's a little bit more palatable for people.
Oh yeah, it's really smart. Cool. So we've covered a lot of ground. I mean, like as far as like your, kind of where you came from, school, composition stuff, teaching, education, everything. So before we part, there's always kind of some questions I like to ask people. We talked about like an initial trigger or spark for your interest in music. And we kind of covered that with as far as how you got involved in playing percussion, what led to that. Is there anything sort of, it could be outside of music even, that you find inspiration for, either when you're starting a new composition project, or just teaching education in general, or playing? Like, is there anything you find outside of music that helps kind of keep you motivated, keep you inspired?
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I, Sarah, we just love to travel. Like, that's kind of our big deal. Oh, it's cool. Always our thing is kind of, where do we want to go next? And even if that's in somewhere that's like not even necessarily all that cool, we just like going places. And sometimes we do get to go places that are cool. We just got back from Thailand about 2 months ago, and we went because we adopted our son, Jack.
Yeah, and, cool. So congratulations, we did a month. By the way.
Thank you. It's been well, I mean, it's been fun, but you said you've got kids, so I mean, like, we're starting at 2, like he's 2. So like we are jumping in the deep end of the pool. Yep. Here's this little kid that you don't know. You've known him for about a month. He doesn't speak English, and he's 2. Enjoy your 14-hour flight home. Good luck. Yeah. So, but it's been a blast, and we just love traveling. So that's been, I'd say, whatever inspiration. I find more inspiration in traveling probably than I do anything else. All right. Just seeing different places and hearing different things, and everywhere's kind of got its own vibe. So I would say that. So
you've been to Thailand before?
No, this was the first time. It was going to get Jack was the first time that we'd been. And so, and how it works is you have to be there. It's just a very long process. Like, it's not like you just get off the plane and say, we're here, let's get it and split. It's you got to stay there. We were there for 21 days.
Oh wow!
Which
I didn't realize
a long
that.
time.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's a long time. And
so, because I'm sure there's a process for kind of getting to know Jack. Like, you spend time with him there. I mean, like you said, you literally you don't get off the plane and then put him in a car seat and get back on the plane and fly home. Obviously, like.
Also, they don't have car seats, which we figured out. They're like, just hold on to him. He's fine. Right. We're like, oh, great. It's so we had to be there. We got a couple days that we got to kind of sightsee and bounce around and do our own thing. Right. And then we met him for the first time, and then we went to visit his foster family, which is where he was living.
Okay.
And we had some court stuff that we had to do, and some, there's, again, mountains and mountains and mountains of paperwork, as you can imagine, and do all that stuff. We had to appear before a board. We had to wait for the United States to do all their side of their paperwork. So we had to go to the embassy a couple times.
Wow.
It's just, it's just a whole thing. And all this time, your whole day might be going to the embassy, waiting in line, filling out a piece of paper, handing it to a guy, and the guy saying, come back in a week. And you go, go back to the hotel. Like that might be the whole day. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff, a lot of bureaucracy involved. And so anyway, but Thailand's we love Thailand a lot, and it's a great place, and we certainly want to go back someday. And there's a certainly its own vibe and its own style, and that will probably end up being a piece kind of based on that trip. I already have a piece called Moving Mountains, which is sort of based on the whole process. So
yeah,
I would say travel and stuff.
Yeah, great. And obviously going back to Thailand with Jack, I would assume, to kind of, obviously, expose him to where he's from and what his culture is. So I think that's awesome.
There's not a booming Thai population in Somerset, Kentucky, as you may be surprised to know.
Right.
So, someday taking him back to kind of to see where he's from and all that kind of stuff, I think is going to be important, and we'll probably do that when he's older for sure. So
he's latched onto Sesame Street then? Is that
connection? Man, he loves Sesame Street. It's funny because he watches, he doesn't watch a lot of TV, and we don't really either. Like we're outside going and doing things, people, but he loves Sesame Street, loves Cookie Monster, loves, as he says, Nelmo. Loves Nelmo.
Oh, yeah.
So he watches Sesame Street and Jeopardy in the news. It's like he's the most well-informed 2-year-old in the world.
Sesame Street and Jeopardy. Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah. That's a pretty wide void there, but yeah. Awesome. Yeah, my girls were, I don't remember them getting too much into Sesame Street. Elmo's World, I guess, pretty much connected. Clifford. They're still into, this is pretty interesting. They still watch Arthur.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with that, the animated aardvarks and animals and stuff. Yeah, right. And which funny story, a couple years ago, I was sort of working from home one day, and the girls were home. I was at the table, and they were watching Arthur, and it was kind of interesting. They were in band. I think the kids were taking music class or something, and then all of a sudden I heard "Bang on a Can All Stars." And I heard David Lang or Julia Wolf speaking. And I was like, a needle on the record scratch. And I looked up, and there was an entire episode. And maybe you've seen it. Episode based around new music, Bang on a Can All Stars. Wow. Like David Cosson was, an animated aardvark, which was pretty cool.
That's hilarious.
They were playing and talking to the kids about new music, and they went. The kids went on the show, went to a concert and everything. So it was pretty hilarious. And
I'll have to try to YouTube that. That's
I think you can Google Bang on a Can, All Stars, and Arthur, and it'll probably pop right up. And then
that's really cool.
Last year or so, I was at the University of Akron for a big performance, and So Percussion was there, and David Lang was there, and so I got introduced to him, and of course, the first thing that comes out of my mouth is like, "I saw you on Arthur," and what happened there? How'd that happen? And I don't know. It wasn't my best foot forward, but he graciously sort of talked about it and how it came about. So super cool. Yeah, check it out. It's
that is cool. Yeah, your girl's got a better deep knowledge of percussion lit than Jack does. Right now, Jack's jamming on the. It's a weird thing. I don't even know how we figured out that he liked it, but he likes reggae.
Nice. And so there's a lot of Marley in your house.
Yeah, like the Sting and Shaggy album. I like Sting. I think like all musicians, I love Sting, and I like reggae too. But like Sting and Shaggy, they put out an album which is not even all that good, but for some reason he loves it and thinks it's just the greatest thing. So I don't know. We have really covered some topics in this hour that we've been on the phone.
It's pretty diverse. It's cool. So hobbies, obviously traveling. That's how you find some inspiration. Any guilty musical pleasures? I know that's
Other
kind
than
of a
Sting
loaded.
and Shaggy, yeah, no.
Right. Anything that. Go ahead.
I do not hate and have never really hated country music like so many of my peers do.
Yeah.
Especially like real country music. Not like I think I got a policy on country music that you've got to be ugly. Like if you're too good looking,
Right.
I don't believe you.
Yeah.
But if you're like a good like ugly looking dude singing, I can usually get behind that. I'm digging this dude now. His
not
name's
so
Tyler
glossy.
Childers.
Right.
Yeah, oh yeah, not glossy. There's a guy named Tyler Childers. He's from Kentucky actually. He's a country music guy. It's kind of more like folky Americana stuff, but it's pretty hip. It's so yeah. I usually when you tell people that they kind of like really like you've not been to conservatory then or something like they kind of give you a little attitude,
Right.
but it's like no, I haven't, but I do like that stuff. So I would say that probably.
No, I was talking with Andrea Vinay for the podcast recently, and she said the same thing. I mean, she's like, I don't hate country music, and I had my heart stopped for a bit because I'm not a huge fan, but no, it's totally cool. I mean, to have such diverse interests, I think is what makes you unique. So yeah,
and
cool.
I don't know Andrea. I've met her briefly, but I don't know her. If she's from the South, I mean, where I grew up, whether you wanted to or not, you were kind of swimming in a sea of it.
Yeah.
So,
well, she's from Arizona. She teaches in Florida now, but she taught in Texas and she taught Missouri, I think. So yeah, she wasn't.
So she got some of it.
Yeah. So
yeah, right.
For cool. Sure. Well, Adam, I appreciate it, man. You got a ton of stuff going on. And congratulations on everything, on Jack,
Thanks,
on your composition projects, on teaching and being a cool dude. It's great to talk to you. So thank you.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you. Well, thanks for having me on the podcast, and hopefully people listen to it and enjoy it.
Yeah, great. Thanks, man. Talk to you soon.
All right, talk to them, man.
Okay, bye.
This has been a BSP production, recorded and produced out of the Black Swamp Percussion facilities in Zeeland, Michigan. Audio assistance by Nathan Coles. And music by Adam Hopper.
It's summertime, so it's going remarkably well, honey. Now we got done. I guess this is week number 2. There's summer. We didn't have any work. Any snow days or anything this year, so we got out pretty early.